Ladies and gentlemen, that might have been the best episode of TV that I've seen, at least in a very long time. I just finished watching Severance episode, I think what it is, 10 of season 2, and that was just seriously such an incredible episode. And by the very end, before the last minute of the episode, I thought there was no way that they were ever going to have a season 3. Like the way they wrapped everything up, obviously there were some questions that would have been left out, but just the way they wrapped everything up seemed like it was a great way to end the story. Up until Mark then leaves Gemma outside. Now Gemma doesn't even understand what's been occurring. She sees Mark. Now she doesn't even understand all of this Severance stuff to begin with. I guess she kind of does, but she sees her husband go off with another woman after he saved her, after she just sees him for the first time and he just sees her for the first time. And I get what Mark is doing. Obviously, Mark is trying to save Gemma so Gemma could go with Audi Mark. That makes perfect sense. But to her, that is not at all what this is. Holy shit. This was a phenomenal episode. This episode had literally everything that I would want out of an episode of Severance. If you think about it, really, it answered so many questions between Miss Cobell, Devin, Mark, and all of them. And as well, you had some of the fun elements of the show to begin with. Like you had obviously Milchick and that whole dance party thing. Sorry for the background changing, but you had that whole dance party thing, which was honestly an interesting callback to the dance party from season 1. You had that here just on steroids. That was so funny. So you got a mix of all these answers that you need. You have the fun. You have obviously what we all wanted was to see Gemma and Mark reunite, but then the twist of that at the end was just insane. There were so many moments in this episode in particular where I was just looking at the TV, I was flipping out. I'm sorry if that was extremely loud, but I'm not even kidding. I was flipping shit, many poop. That was crazy. That was an incredible episode. And I know I'm just freaking out talking in circles, but I'm glad they ended it in a way that was just really freaking solid. I don't know how else to describe it. Obviously, I literally just got out of my bed watching this episode. I wasn't going to record this video tonight, but I was I have to do this. It's just in my head. I have to do it. If it means I'm staying up till freaking midnight tonight editing and stuff, I don't care. This was incredible. This was incredible. This is how you write TV. And this is a show that I could easily say is a must watch, especially after that finale. And here's the thing. The last few episodes of Severance Season 2 were not the strongest for me. The Cobell episode, and then some of the other episodes, even episode 9 wasn't anything special. You know what I mean? It wasn't the same, and it started, I felt to go down in quality, but then this episode shot right back up, and it's pretty interesting because now in retrospect, in a somewhat similar way, season 1 had a similar thing. Even though the pacing of season 1 was really solid, it was still when you got to the ending of season 1, you just felt so well-rounded and the story felt phenomenal. I feel the exact same way this time around, except obviously there was, in my opinion, a couple more bumps along the way to get to that point, if that makes any sense. Not that it was bad, because it wasn't. This is again, it's a must-watch show. You have to see this freaking show. But this was just so good. There was so much that went down between this being literally a movie. This was an hour and 26, well, not an hour and 26 minutes. It was an hour and 15-ish of exact runtime, albeit the credits and all of that stuff. But it felt like a movie because of that, and it just worked so well. There was just so much here that was just insane. And I'm trying to recap all of it, but it was really interesting. For instance, you had Dylan in this episode. Dylan's Audi telling him, one, to fuck you, because he was talking to his Audi's wife, which was interesting. So you had Audi Dylan basically saying you can't resign, but the choice is yours if you want to resign. Then on top of that, after the entire thing with Miss Cobell and Devin explaining to Audi Mark, or any Mark, which I should say was crazy, Any Mark was being told everything about what's happening and Gemma and all of that stuff and being told the full picture. And then one of the best parts of this episode was the conversations that were had between Innie and Audi Mark. That was something I never thought we would see, and it was done in a way that I just thought was absolutely phenomenal. Them going back and forth with the camcorder and having those conversations just felt so natural, felt so good, and the acting is just top notch. Adam Scott does such an incredible job of playing both of these characters. Like, you really do believe when you're watching this episode, you really do believe that those are two different people. Obviously, they look the same, they sound the same, but they don't feel the same. And that takes a lot of range as an actor. And Adam just fucking nails it. Tooth and nail. Like, tooth and nail. Obviously, nails, whatever. Anyway, it just works so well. And seeing that dynamic was really interesting. And at first, when I was watching the episode, I had thought 100% that any Mark was going to turn on Outie Mark. And I thought that would have made for something really interesting because Outie Mark was kind of really weird in the way that he was wording all the things that he was saying about, you know, the story of like Gemma and all of that stuff. And I don't think he was doing a great job at convincing any Mark of the real situation and like the gravity of the situation, or just explaining like, oh, you are me, like we are the same person and all that stuff. And I know that's difficult to explain. I do get that, but my God. So that was great. The Dylan thing was great. Then even Mark explaining to Helly was phenomenal. Him explaining to Helly essentially that they were going to die once they completed Cold Harbor, and all of that was just so interesting to see their dynamic, them coming to terms with, okay, well, any Mark is doing something to save Outie Mark's wife, and so like it's not cheating, but it's like I do have a wife out there that I gotta save and all of that stuff. It just flowed well, it worked well, and it really felt like Endgames. It felt like this was the last episode of the show, which I thought was, again, very convincing because that is genuinely what it felt like. Then you have the whole marching band situation come in at the end, and I loved in the beginning we got to see a little bit more of like a redemption, I guess you could say, of Milchick when Kier was talking to him, the robot Kier, which was hilarious, and he was throwing digs at Milchick, and Milchick started to throw digs back at him out of anger, which I thought was great because you still get a little bit of that redemption arc, which I still think is eventually going to happen for Mr. Milchick, and I can't wait to see where that goes in season 3. Milkshake is a great character. Even if he's like the villain character, he is a phenomenal one, and I really, really enjoy watching him, and I just think in general that will be very interesting to see where it goes. But that was funny, and the marching band came in, and then that whole sequence was just so solid. I don't know the bearded man's name. I forget his name. I know they said it in this episode, and I know you guys got on my case for that last time. Sorry, there's a lot of characters in between all the shows I watch and things like that. Beard guy, big guy. Don't know what else to call him, but I loved that whole sequence with him, and that opens up a whole other door. How did they get in the door? What? How did that happen? And then also Irving, how did Irving know about this door if the door was behind a wall that you had to like go through an invisible thing to go? What happened? What? And then the way that eventually Brienne of Tarth, I forget her name, but the way Brienne of Tarth beats his ass, and then Mark beats his ass, and then Mark drags him down there with the goat gun. I don't know what you call it, but that was just awesome to see. And then when he goes down and severs, he accidentally pulls the trigger, which was so crazy. That was another moment in this episode where I was pooping Hershey Kisses. I'm not kidding. It was fucking insane. That was awesome. It just was. I know I'm geeking out really hard, but there were many moments where I was like flipping out, like on the edge of my seat. I had a stomach ache before I started watching this episode, and I think the shock of this somehow cured it. I am not kidding. There was a lot of moments of that. Like, I'd never really thought that he was going to get down there, that Mark was going to get down there and actually get through to Gemma. But the way it was done was just so interesting. And then also Cold Harbor was interesting. Obviously, we know inevitably that was going to kill her. They were just seeing all of the 25 personalities for the 25 cases that he worked. We saw all of that play out, but it was just done in a way that I would have never imagined, never thought of, and it was creative. And I think that's one of the things that I love so much about this show is it is extremely creative. That is the best way to put it. Everything about this show just works. Like, it's done so well, and I loved how in this episode, we finally got a very dark side to it with murder now. And not that I'm like a freak for those type of things in shows, but I felt like that was the one element that the show was missing, was like that side of it, and it was really interesting to see it come from Mark, and the way it came from Mark, and it just played off so well, and that reunion between Gemma and Mark was just outstanding, out-fucking-standing. I'm sorry, I know I'm cursing a lot and all of that stuff, but look, this was great. This was absolutely great. I know we're not going to have to wait 3 years for season 3. I know Ben Stiller already said that and things like that, but God, I don't want to wait a minute. My girlfriend just started watching Severance season 1, and she rolled right into season 2, which was great, and that's kind of what I did too. But like the idea that you guys had to wait for 3 years, for those of you who started watching 3 years ago when Severance season 1 came out, I feel horrible because now we're all going to have to wait for the season 2 too. So now I know what that feels like. But man, 3 years, that must have been torture. And especially with this finale, this is going to open so many cans of worms. Like, what happens to the innies now? Are they going to live? Are they going to die? How does this even proceed? Like, I have no idea where on earth this could go, especially for Gemma and Mark. What is happening there? Milchick, and now he's trapped with these people. And what about everyone else? The Egans. What about all of them? What happens when Helena, you should say, what happens when she finds out about this? What happens to all of this? This is going to be truly special, and I really hope they keep the momentum going with season 3, because season 2, despite some of its low points, was outstanding, and this, I think, might have been the best episode of the show. I really do. It was so good. Maybe my opinion will change over time. I literally just finished watching. I don't know, but I loved it, and would love to know your thoughts down in the comments. So with all that out of the way, thank you again so much for watching this video, and until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Peace out.